My wife's STD diagnosis exposed her betrayal. I left her at the hospital with unpaid medical bills. I, a 40-year-old man, have been married to Lauren, 41, for 6 years. We weren't the type of couple that radiated love all the time. There was mutual respect and understanding. I believed I was married to a mature woman, someone who wasn't needy or constantly seeking attention. Turns out I was wrong. My illusion shattered when Lauren fell gravely ill. At first, it seemed like nothing more than food poisoning. She was vomiting nonstop and couldn't keep food or water down. Pale, weak, and dehydrated, she refused to go to the hospital, claiming she feared needles and IVs. I did my best to care for her, but after a day and a half, condition worsened. Despite her fears, I rushed her to the hospital, terrified of what might happen. As they took her into the ER, I hugged her tightly, promising that everything would be okay and that I wouldn't leave her side. I truly meant that promise at the time, not knowing how soon I would fail to keep it. Her symptoms were vague, but something in my gut told me something was deeply wrong. The next 48 hours would prove to be life-altering. Condition stabilized. She grew even paler and weaker. Doctors began running tests, suspecting an underlying issue behind her symptoms. 2 days later, as Lauren lay in bed hooked up to an envelope was handed to me by a nurse. She mentioned the doctor would explain the results shortly. Curiosity and dread got the better of me. I opened it. At first, the words didn't make sense. Positive for chlamydia. I froze, staring at the report, my mind racing. 1,000 thoughts filled my head, each more horrifying than the last. I convinced myself it had to be a mistake, that samples must have been mixed up. Desperate for answers, I looked up information online, only to find more reasons to panic. When the doctor called me into his office, I pointed to the test result, asking, "This can't be right. There must be a mistake." He calmly replied, "I'm sorry, the tests are accurate. We'll start treatment immediately." My mind spun. My wife had contracted an STD, and the implications were undeniable. When Lauren woke up, I handed her the report without a word. Her face turned ashen, and tears streamed down her cheeks. She stammered, "I can explain. I couldn't contain my anger." "Explain what? How could you contract an STD in this marriage where we haven't even been intimate for months? Because you're always too tired. How is this possible? You've been cheating, haven't you?" My voice rose, cutting through the hospital room. She broke down sobbing, apologizing profusely. Her tears meant nothing to me. I demanded the truth, pushing her to confess. After what felt like an eternity of silence and crying, she admitted she had been secretly seeing multiple men whenever she had the chance. Lauren revealed that most of these encounters were with clients from her work as a hairdresser. She detailed how she would subtly exchange contact information and meet them later, claiming it was just sex. Her words felt like daggers. One sentence haunted me. "It's something I do occasionally. It's my guilty pleasure. I know it's wrong, but I can't stop." I shouted, "You cheated on me with strangers. For how long?" Her response only deepened my anger. This had been going on for years. She tried to justify her actions by saying she was drunk during most of these encounters and avoided intimacy with me afterward to protect me. Her excuses enraged me. I stood up so abruptly that my chair toppled over. "You risked my health, our trust, our marriage. For what? You didn't mean to hurt me? You're unbelievable." I stormed out of the room, disgusted. Doctors advised me to get tested immediately. Terrified, I complied and left the hospital while she remained for treatment. Driving aimlessly for hours, my mind replayed every word of her confession. Texts flooded my phone, but I ignored them. I decided then and there she would no longer be a part of my life. I packed all her belongings and dumped them in her car parked in the garage. I even hired a cleaning service to disinfect the entire apartment. I couldn't stand the idea of any trace of her in my space. Finally, I contacted a lawyer and scheduled a consultation. An online meeting to discuss my case. I had scheduled an online meeting with my attorney to discuss my case. I was determined not to spend another day with that repulsive woman. I never went back to the hospital after everything that happened. At one point, the hospital called me, asking to settle the bills so her treatment could continue smoothly. I didn't care whether she existed or not. Lauren sent me furious voice messages, accusing me of being a terrible husband. She even mentioned how we had vowed to take care of each other in sickness, and claimed I was breaking my vows by abandoning her. Hearing her talk about vows made my blood boil. What about the vow of staying faithful? Did that mean nothing to her when she betrayed me repeatedly? Her manipulative tactics were laughable, to say the least. On the day she was discharged, my phone was bombarded with calls from her at the hospital. I ignored all of them, knowing full well it was likely about paying her bills. She had exceeded her insurance coverage. I received email copies of the invoices and knew she didn't have much left on her credit card to pay them. But why should I help? She ruined everything herself. Thought of me covering her medical bills after what she did? Never. She eventually convinced a co-worker to help her. Brought her to my apartment. When they arrived, I didn't open the door. Her keys were still inside from when we left the hospital, so she couldn't get in. I shouted through the door, saying she wasn't welcome and could collect her things from the basement. I had packed her car with valuables and moved her other belongings to the basement. I slid her car keys under the door. She stood outside, crying and banging on the door, begging me to let her in. After some time, I saw her co-worker leave, leaving Lauren stranded at my doorstep. Part of me almost gave in. Seeing her like that, broken and with nowhere to go. But her pleas for mercy didn't move me. She had put herself in that situation. Lauren eventually drove off, likely to collect her things from the basement. Meanwhile, my test results came back, thankfully negative. I felt a momentary relief, as though I had dodged a bullet. However, the fact that she put me in such a precarious position was unforgivable. The doctor advised repeating the test in a month, as infections sometimes remain dormant. There was still a chance I might be infected, but undetected. I scheduled the follow-up and started the divorce process. As for Lauren, I have no idea where she went or how she's been doing. She bombarded me with messages asking for forgiveness, and even requested to stay in the apartment until she recovered. Her messages shifted from pleading to outright threats, accusing me of abandoning her and promising to tell everyone how terrible of a husband I was. Frankly, if she wanted to air our dirty laundry, I would sit back and enjoy the spectacle. Her apologies and excuses about making a mistake or not meaning to hurt me didn't erase years of lies and reckless decisions. Her attempts to manipulate me into taking her back or letting her stay at my place showed her complete lack of accountability. Update 1 year later, I retook tests and thankfully it was still negative. Lauren didn't give up easily though. She called her parents, telling them I abandoned her at the hospital and threw her out of the house without reason. They showed up at my door demanding an explanation. I didn't sugarcoat anything. I asked them, did she tell you why? If not, don't you think you should have asked her first before coming here to accuse me? Since you're here, let me explain. Your daughter cheated on me. Not with just one man, but with several over the years. And she contracted an STD, putting my health at risk. Did she share that part with you? Of course not. She was too busy playing the victim. Their expressions of shock were priceless. Her mother immediately called her, demanding to know if it was true. I don't know what Lauren said, but her mother started yelling, calling her stupid and irresponsible. Her father turned red with rage, snatched the phone, and shouted, "Aren't you ashamed of yourself? And you lied to us, saying he abandoned you. You know what? Stay where you are. We have nothing to do with you anymore." They stormed off angrily. Later, my attorney contacted Lauren to get her current address, the divorce papers. She gave her parents' address. When the papers arrived, her mother called me, pleading for me to reconsider. She told me Lauren had been staying in a motel for a week after I threw her out, and eventually begged her parents for help when her condition worsened. Her mother took her in, but Lauren was fired from her job after her co-workers spread rumors about her condition. Her mother explained Lauren had burned through her savings on medical bills and now had no income prospects. She suggested I either postpone the divorce or assist with her medical expenses. I laughed bitterly and told her Lauren made her bed. Now she could lie in it. Lauren also sent me a long, supposedly heartfelt apology email filled with remorse and self-pity. She claimed she was a shadow of her former self, broke with mounting medical bills, no job, a ruined reputation, no support. She admitted her friends had abandoned her, and even her siblings refused to visit their parents' home because of her. Her father, a traditional man, couldn't bear the humiliation and despised her presence. Only her mother was trying to support her, though financial stress was straining their relationship. Lauren's depression deepened. She barely got out of bed or ate. But what could I do about it? She brought this on herself. She had tried to have the best of both worlds and failed miserably. Now, she's living with the consequences of her actions. Update 2: what happened in Update 2. Our divorce was finalized. The process was quite tumultuous. Lauren refused to cooperate, insisting she deserved another chance and pleading for sympathy and compassion due to her health issues. She often broke down in front of the judge, swearing she'd do anything to save the marriage. I filed a lawsuit against her for endangering my life by exposing me to a potentially deadly virus. Her defense was that she avoided intimacy with me to protect me and that she used protection during her affairs, as if that justified her betrayal. It was incredibly hard for me, but I stood firm. I wanted nothing to do with her anymore. I didn't even fight over assets because it would have dragged the process out further. She was ordered to undergo therapy as her behavior was increasingly erratic. Over time, her physical health improved, which seemed like a sign she might finally accept reality. But unfortunately, that wasn't the case. As soon as she recovered from her illness, she began begging for another chance, claiming she was now clean, free of the disease. Did she really think I'd take her back just because she no longer had an STD? I can't even describe how emotionally draining it was to deal with her delusions. The worst part was how much sympathy she received from others for being ill and going through a divorce while battling clinical depression. Meanwhile, no one seemed to care about what I was going through. Betrayal still haunts me. It's hard to live with the thought that my wife didn't find me good enough and sought other men. She risked my health in the process. I had to pay her alimony and split half of my assets. Why? Because I refused to give another chance to a wife who betrayed me. As you can imagine, this divorce got ugly. Lauren kept dragging things out. A couples therapist was assigned to us during the proceedings, which turned out to be unexpectedly helpful. I had underestimated the value of a neutral mediator. If I had known earlier, I might have sought help before things reached this point. The therapist managed to extract truth from her and laid everything out clearly. The therapist helped her understand she made the conscious choice to give in to her desires. Similarly, I had the right to choose whether to forgive her or not. She couldn't force me to move past her betrayal and pretend everything was fine. By then, the possibility of saving the marriage had long been gone. It was time for her to face reality and accept it. Finally, it's over. Now I'm moving forward with my life. As you can tell from the timeline of my posts and updates, almost 2 years have passed since this ordeal began. I truly feel like I'm starting over, but I'm exhausted from all the stress and anxiety I've endured. Sometimes I feel like disappearing or moving to a place where no one knows me, just to escape it all. I'm so tired of everything. I'm still in therapy, and I hope to get through this difficult phase soon and rebuild my life.